The Galactic Council was a monument to the age-old belief in superiority. Composed of the oldest, most powerful species in the galaxy, its members had ruled for eons with an iron fist, maintaining order and balance across the stars. They had fought wars, conquered worlds, and established a status quo that kept all lesser species in check. To them, the humans of Earth were a curious anomaly, primitive, unremarkable, and easily dismissed. Their technology was considered outdated, their military laughable, and their position in the grand cosmic hierarchy insignificant. Earth was just another world among billions. Nothing special. When the invitation came to send a representative to Galactic Council, it was seen as a formality, a chance for humans to express their trivial concerns. The Council wasn't interested in the humans' petty disputes or meager demands. It was a chance for the Council to remind Earth of its place in the galaxy, beneath the feet of the powerful species that ruled the stars. The humans, however, had a different perspective. The human diplomat, chosen for their sharp intellect and unyielding sense of justice, entered the council chamber with no pretense of subservience. They knew what the council expected, but they were prepared to deliver something far more dangerous. The truth, a truth that had been buried for far too long. Humanity would no longer bow to the whims of the galaxy's overlords. As the meeting began, the council members, each from a different corner of the galaxy, made their usual demands. Resources, territory, trade agreements, and matters of intergalactic law dominated the agenda. The human diplomat sat quietly at the table, observing, waiting for the moment when they could make their voice heard. The aliens were eloquent, self-assured, and full of condescension as they discussed matters that they believed affected nothing more than insignificant species. But when the time came for humanity to speak, the diplomat rose from their seat with a calm demeanor that betrayed none of the fire they felt inside. "You attacked our home," the diplomat said plainly, their voice steady and clear. The room fell silent. The council members exchanged glances, unsure if they had heard correctly. The human diplomat's words hung in the air like a challenge, a statement that threatened to upend everything they thought they knew about Earth. The council's first reaction was one of mockery. The very idea that Earth, a small, relatively unknown planet, could be the target of an attack from such an advanced civilization seemed absurd. The species that made up the council had long considered humans beneath them, a species too focused on their own survival to matter in the grand cosmic scale. They had never considered Earth as a threat or even a worthy adversary. After all, humanity was only recently discovering space travel. What could they possibly have that would concern the Galactic Council? But as the diplomat spoke again, their voice unwavering, the alien started to realize that this was no mere accusation. The human was speaking with the weight of something far greater than a mere protest. It was the sound of a species that had endured countless hardships, fought wars, and survived against all odds. It was the voice of a species that had been pushed to the brink of extinction and had refused to go quietly into the night. "We've endured your attacks, your sabotage, your destruction," the diplomat continued. "You thought you could take what you wanted without consequence. But we are not the weak, helpless species you think we are." The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had always assumed that humanity's apparent weakness was something they could exploit without fear of reprisal. Now, they were faced with the uncomfortable reality that the humans were not as easily cowed as they had believed. The human diplomat's words echoed in the chamber, reverberating off the walls as the council members struggled to process the implications. Earth had been under attack. Earth had fought back. And now, the human diplomat was making it clear. They were done being passive. They were done allowing the galactic powers to manipulate and destroy their home. Humanity was ready to stand up. The silence in the room deepened, and for the first time, the Galactic Council began to question their assumptions about Earth. The human diplomats stood their ground, undeterred by the stunned silence that had descended upon the council chamber. Their words, though few, had already set the tone. The council members, once so certain of their dominance, now found themselves questioning everything they knew about humanity. The diplomat did not flinch, continuing their address with a clarity that sent a ripple of unease through the room. "You attacked our home," they repeated. But this time, there was more behind the words. It wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration, a challenge. But what you fail to understand is that Earth is not like other worlds you've conquered. We do not fall easily. The Diplomat's voice resonated with the weight of history. Humanity had been on the receiving end of invasions, wars, and betrayals. The council members, so accustomed to dealing with species that cower before them, couldn't fathom the depth of humanity's resilience. They had expected to dismiss the human as a naive representative, someone to humor while they went about their affairs. But what they were hearing now was something entirely different. A species that had been pushed to the brink of extinction and had fought back with every ounce of its being. The Diplomat's words were precise, each one measured for maximum impact. When we were attacked, we did not wait for help. We didn't send out a distress signal to the rest of the galaxy, hoping someone would come to our rescue. We fought, we adapted, and we won. The council members exchanged looks of disbelief. How could this be? Earth, this primitive species that they had long seen as little more than a curiosity, had actually fought back? It seemed impossible. The council was made up of civilizations that had mastered the art of war over millennia. Their fleets were vast, their technology far superior to anything humanity had developed. How could a species so young, so unrefined, possibly hope to challenge them? The human Diplomat leaned forward, their gaze never wavering. We've faced extinction at your hands. We've had our cities burned, our people enslaved, and our resources plundered. And yet we still stand. We still rise. Because that is what humans do. We survive. The council's disbelief began to shift into something else, fear. The concept of humanity's resilience was one that they had never fully appreciated. And now, the Diplomat was making it clear that humanity's will survive was not just a passing trait. It was their greatest strength. The humans were not bound by the same limitations that many of the council species had long since outgrown. They didn't rely solely on technology, brute strength, or overwhelming numbers. They relied on their unyielding determination, their ability to adapt to the worst of circumstances, and their relentless pursuit of survival. And now, humanity was making a bold promise. They would never allow themselves to be preyed upon again. Don't make the mistake of thinking we are weak, the Diplomat warned. We may not have the vast fleets or the advanced weaponry of your kind, but we have something far more dangerous. We have the will to fight, to do whatever it takes to protect what's ours, and that you cannot measure. A murmur passed through the council as the reality of what they were facing began to set in. Humanity was no longer the helpless victim they had assumed. The Diplomat had spoken the truth, and now the council members could feel the weight of their past decisions bearing down on them. What they had done to Earth was not just an attack. It was a declaration of war, and humanity, it seemed, was prepared to respond in kind. The room was silent, and for the first time, the members of the Galactic Council began to realize that the humans they had dismissed as insignificant were far more than they had ever imagined. The Diplomat's words had ignited something deep within the hearts of the Council, and in that moment, they understood that Earth would no longer be a victim. They would no longer tolerate being under the thumb of a galaxy that thought it could destroy them without consequence. Humanity had not only survived, it had learned, and now, the galaxy would learn to fear the power of that survival. As the room remained cloaked in a heavy silence, the human Diplomat stood unwavering, letting the weight of their words settle over the council. They had already made the point clear. Humanity was not weak, but they weren't done. The Diplomat's voice, now sharp and confident, cut through the tension. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about power, strategy, and the unspoken truth that the Galactic Council had never considered. Humanity had been holding back. We've been hiding our true potential, the Diplomat stated. For years, we've kept our greatest strengths secret, not out of fear, but because we knew we weren't ready to unleash them. But make no mistake, the time has come. The council members shifted uneasily in their seats. The human Diplomat had already demonstrated resilience, but this was something entirely different. They had assumed that humanity's strength was simply their will to survive. But now, the Diplomat was hinting at something far more dangerous. A weapon, a strategy, a force that could rival the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Our military may not have the size of your fleets, the Diplomat continued, but we've learned to turn what we have into something far more effective. We don't need the biggest weapons. We've mastered the art of surprise. We can hit you where you least expect it. We've learned from every attack you've made, every strike you've landed on our home, and now we've turned those lessons into our advantage. The council members exchanged nervous glances. The idea that humans, with their limited resources and seemingly primitive technology, could have developed the means to fight back in such an advanced and calculated way was unthinkable. Yet here they were, hearing it from the very mouth of the human diplomat. The implications were staggering. "We've developed tactics you could never have imagined," the diplomat added. "You're accustomed to overwhelming force, to crushing your enemies with sheer numbers and firepower. But we know how to fight smart. We know how to use our environment, our technology, and our ingenuity to outmaneuver you. We're not just warriors. We're problem solvers, and that makes us more dangerous than you can possibly fathom." The more the diplomat spoke, the more the council members began to realize the scale of their mistake. Humanity had always been underestimated. Their potential had been written off, their capabilities ignored. But now, as the diplomat laid out their strategic advantage, the council saw the undeniable truth. Humans have been quietly building their own strength for years, biding their time until the moment was right. We've studied your tactics, your weaknesses, your strategies. We know how you think. We know your patterns. And now we have the ability to strike when it matters most. The diplomat continued, their voice growing colder. What you thought was a small, insignificant species is now a formidable enemy. We've learned from our past mistakes, and we built something you never saw coming. The council shifted again, the mood in the room beginning to sour. What had once been a discussion about galactic diplomacy had now turned into a terrifying realization. Earth was no longer a target to be picked off at will. Humanity had become a force that couldn't be ignored. The weapons, the tactics, the ingenuity, they were all coming together, and the council realized they had no idea what the humans were truly capable of. The diplomat paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. "You may have thought you could destroy us with your superior fleets, your advanced technology. But now, you will see what happens when you attack a species that refuses to die, refuses to back down. We are not the prey you thought we were. We are the ones you will fear." The silence in the room was deafening. The council, once so sure of their dominance, now faced the terrifying prospect that humanity had been holding back a power that could one day rival, if not surpass, the very civilizations that had once seen Earth as insignificant. The human diplomat had made it clear. Earth was no longer just a survivor. It was a force to be reckoned with. The room fell into an eerie quiet, one that carried a palpable weight. The members of the Galactic Council had always prided themselves on their power, on the way they ruled over lesser species with ease. But now, as the human diplomat finished speaking, they were left with nothing but silence and a growing sense of unease. What they had once dismissed as a fragile, insignificant species was standing before them, not as a supplicant, but as a challenger, a species that had not only survived but had evolved into something far more dangerous. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council found themselves at a loss for words. They had assumed humanity was just another in a long line of conquered species, to be controlled and discarded. They had thought that Earth, with its primitive technology and relatively young spacefaring history, posed no threat. But now, faced with the undeniable reality that humans have been hiding their true strength, their entire worldview was being shattered. The human diplomat's voice rang out one final time, cold and resolute. "The next time you think about attacking our home, remember this moment. Remember that we will not hesitate to fight back. We will not allow our survival to be determined by the whims of those who think they are our masters." As the words echoed in the chamber, the council members sat in stunned silence. They had been so certain of their superiority, so convinced of their unchallenged dominance over the galaxy, that they had never once considered that the humans might rise up, that they might be more than just a footnote in the galactic order. But now, the human diplomat had made it clear, humanity would no longer be the silent victim. They would no longer accept their place as pawns in the schemes of the powerful. A murmur rippled through the room, and for the first time, the council members exchanged uncertain glances. The once unshakable confidence of the council had begun to crack. What had seemed like a routine diplomatic exchange had turned into a confrontation that none of them had expected. The Council, which had dealt with species far older and more advanced, now found themselves in a precarious position. The idea of underestimating humanity had cost them dearly, and the consequences of their actions were becoming clear. The human diplomat continued, their words cutting through the tension like a blade. We may be small, we may be young, but we are not weak, and we are not alone. Earth will not face the galaxy's wrath alone. We have learned the value of alliances, of finding strength in unity. You may have thought we were scattered, divided, and powerless. But now you will see what happens when we fight together. The Council, stunned into inaction, could only sit and listen. For the first time in a long time, they were no longer the ones in control. The power had shifted, and the galaxy's most powerful beings were now left wondering if they had made a fatal mistake. As the human diplomat's final words hung in the air, the room remained silent. The weight of the moment had settled over the Council like a heavy fog. They could no longer ignore the truth that had been laid before them. Humanity, the species they had once written off as insignificant, had evolved into something more. They had learned from their past, from their mistakes, and they had grown stronger because of it. And in that silence, the galaxy's most powerful rulers came to a horrifying realization. The next time they decided to attack Earth, when they thought they could wipe out a species they had long considered beneath them, there would be no easy victory. Humanity had declared its defiance, and in doing so, they forced the Galactic Council to confront the one thing they had never considered, a species that would not bow, a species that had the power to rise. The Council's silence was deafening, but in that silence, there was one undeniable truth. Humanity had shown them that they were not the prey. They were the predators now,